Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Only Podcast. I am your host, Chris Vanini, here with another week to talk about the happenings in Michigan State sports. I'm joined, as always, by TOC Managing Editor Joe Toohey, and we've got hockey writer Jeremy Dewar with us today. So, how are you guys doing tonight?
Pretty good. Yeah, this was meant to be recorded about 2 hours earlier if I hadn't gotten caught up at Hopcat Ann Arbor opening. But no, I'm doing better than average, I would say.
Yes, Joe may be a little inebriated, but he's the boss now, so he gets to do what he wants.
How you doing, Jeremy?
Doing good. Just trying to survive the negative 20-degree weather here in Grand Rapids. So surviving that and just ready to view another big weekend here for MSU sports. So it's a good one.
Yes, it's cold. As long as it's not adding too much snow that I have to shovel away, I can deal with it. But it's looking like single digits this weekend.
For sure.
But I can deal with it. Some of my dogs have a tougher time with it. So, but yeah, so we just actually, while we're recording this, we just got done watching Illinois-Michigan basketball game in Champaign, which Wolverines seem to have in hand with about 3 minutes to go before something like a 21-0 run by Illinois went into forced overtime in the Illini pulled out a win there. So Illinois got now, in the past about a week, they've got a win at MSU and they've got a home win against Michigan, as they are sitting right there on the bubble with MSU right now.
Yeah, Michigan narrowly avoided getting shut out in 2 straight overtimes.
Yeah, well, that was, because it was a 10-0 in East Lansing.
Exactly.
And then it was started off 14-0 tonight until they got 2 free throws late. But if you add in the Wisconsin overtime previously, it was a 25-0 run for opponents against Michigan in overtime over the last 3 overtime periods, which is, I mean, when you look at the roster that Michigan's got right now, I think something like 7 scholarship guys. I mean, it's the very definition of the well running dry. So barring a Big Ten tournament win, it's hard to see the Wolverines making it into the NCAA tournament. Michigan State, meanwhile, seems to be on the right side of the bubble right now, but they are very much still on the bubble. One reason for that was because of that 59-54 loss to the Illini at Breslin Center, which was kind of a weird game. I missed the first half, but what I'd seen in the second half, just a very weird game. MSU was out-rebounded. They lost a battle on the glass, which was doesn't happen often this year. And the Spartans went 7 for 18 at the free throw line, which you could say that lost them the game right there at the free throw line. I mean, the offense has been inconsistent, the defense has been inconsistent, but you're supposed to make your free throws. Missing 11 out of 18 probably cost them that game, and it's probably the third game that it's cost them, along with the Texas Southern and Maryland home games. So the Spartans are sitting at 16-8 when they could be 19-5 if they win those games. But they bounced back with a dominating performance at Northwestern, where they made 13 three-pointers to cruise to a 68-44 victory in Evanston. One that they needed to have, one that they didn't have too much trouble with. So now they've going to a stretch here with Ohio State coming up on Saturday. But Joe, when you're looking back at the past week for MSU basketball, what you've been rating different DEF CON levels to where things are at right now and their chances of making the tournament? Where's it at right now?
So yeah, on the DEF CON scale, right, it's 1 to 5. 5 being the furthest away from nuclear winter, right? Which to me is not making the tournament. Ending the tournament streak would be a really major issue for this program, I think. And I think they're at a solid 3 right now, which means that they're right at the bubble. With an extended streak or really any bad loss at this point would be a major issue. Any good win, though, would sort of put them on the right side. So there's an opportunity for that on Saturday. The issue is is that there's in ending games that are close, at least. And this is something that you've talked about, Chris, for basically the entire season. But it's still like it's still a major issue, right? Making 7 of 18 free throws in a game is just a major problem. And you say that we got out rebounded, and I'm not sure that that's true to a certain extent. If you look at rebounding percentages, it wasn't, it was a fairly even rebounding matchup. But the more interesting thing to me, at least, is that up until that Northwestern game, since Iowa, like, they hadn't shot above 40% from 3 in any given game, and I figured that was bound to change. And the superstitious semi-hockey fan in me, and Jeremy will appreciate this, it thinks that, like, there can't be that many games that we're going to shoot, 52% from 3 or whatever it was. And I think that's exactly what it was against Northwestern. And so you almost hate to see that game go towards a Northwestern on the road there, but that's a fallacy to some degree, right? That 3-point shooting percentage is something that probably might happen or should happen in more games. But yeah, it was a weird week. There's nothing else to say about that. The loss was major and the win was expected. So yeah, you're at DEFCON 3, and that's about all you can say.
Yeah, you mentioned opportunities for good wins. Ohio State on Saturday would be an opportunity for a good win. At Wisconsin on March 1st would be an opportunity for a good win, though that seems quite unlikely. And finishing the season with at Indiana, regular season with at Indiana, would probably be another opportunity for a good one. Other than that, Michigan on the road, Illinois on the road, Minnesota and Purdue at home. Those are games that MSU, probably has to win. After the Iowa game, they had a stretch where actually they were favored in KenPom in every single remaining game other than at Maryland and at Wisconsin. So in that stretch of, I think 8 games after the Iowa game, the stretch of 8, 6-1 or 7-1 was kind of where things should have gone, and instead.
Well, I'm going to interject there for a second, just because the way that those percentages work doesn't suggest, just because you're favored to win at a game doesn't necessarily mean.
I just mean based on where MSU was at the time, sitting at 12-5, 3-1, and based on the opponents, Penn State, Nebraska, Rutgers, down and out Michigan, Illinois, Northwestern twice. 7-1. If they wanted to compete for the Big Ten title, they would have to go 7-1 there.
Yeah.
And instead, they went 5-3, and they find themselves still on the bubble, and with a lot of work still to go.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if they were looking at competing for the Big Ten title, I just don't think that was expected, right? I think that at least one loss in those 8 games.
I think after the Iowa game, though, coming off the 20-point win over Indiana, followed by a 14-point win at Iowa, was probably the high point of where the team was at this year, I think. And that's probably when people were most optimistic. And they followed that up with a stretch of 5-3 that included 2 overtime wins against Northwestern and Michigan. So, and a 6-point win over Penn State. So very much not, I think, what they were looking for.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So, I mean, Jeremy, what do you think of how this last week or so has gone for hoops?
Yeah, it's the loss to Illinois was pretty frustrating. I know early off in that first half there, they really felt like Illinois was missing everything, and it was a chance that if State could make a quick run and build themselves a big lead, they probably could have gotten that win on Saturday. But I know Dakich mentioned it a couple of times on the broadcast. They just never they weren't taking advantage of Illinois' slow start, and it's just one of those things where you let a team hang around, and once they got going, State had no answer for it. And kind of like Joe said, and like you've been saying all season, close games with this team, you can't feel confident in the last 5 minutes. They just haven't proven that they can get points down a stretch, and whether that involves free throw shooting or just getting good looks at the basket, they just seem to really not be able to pull those out. So it was nice to see, though, after the close win over Northwestern at home, it was nice to see that they rebounded and really, didn't even make a contest of it. It was over at half, and the second half was just a chance to continue to work on things. So, but like you guys also said, I mean, that's kind of an expected win. But with this team, I don't even know if you can count too much on expected wins, and if they're wins, they're just going to be close. So it was nice to see a nice big margin of victory, but that could all, I think a lot sways on this Saturday against Ohio State, finally playing a good team again, looking to hopefully make a statement here.
Yeah, you mentioned against Illinois, every single time they got it to maybe one possession, or if they tied it, they could never get over that hump, or when they did make a play, Illinois always seemed to answer it. I thought Illinois looked pretty impressive there down the stretch. There was that one play there where I don't have the play-by-play in front of me, but MSU, it was Trice who got fouled, and they trailed by 2 or 3 points.
3, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 3.
Late.
Yep.
Trice misses the first free throw, and Illinois player boxes him out, but kind of hits him low. And it was kind of a weird play. They review it, and they decide to call it technical, which I really didn't understand. If they had called that live, I could have understood it a little bit. I can't understand how you could go back through the monitor and make that call like that. And MSU down 3 would have been an opportunity to, because they would shoot 2 free throws. Trice would finish. They would shoot 2 free throws, and I believe get the ball back.
Yep.
Trice makes his second, so it's a 2-point game. Forbes makes 1, misses 1, and they come out of the possession still trailing when they could have taken the lead at the free throw line, or at least tied it at the free throw line, and with the ball. And I think that when you're looking at Trice and Forbes, those aren't, that's not Brandon Dawson at the free throw line. That's not Gavin Schilling at the free throw line. It's your starting point guard and your starting shooting guard. They went 2 for 2 at the free throw line with the game on the line. That's bad. And you look at 17 being bad, but when you look at that situation where the game was, right there for them, and to not take advantage was a pretty glaring error there. And free throws cost them the game. They're supposed to be easy to make. MSU's 332nd nationally in free throw shooting right now, out of about 350, 360 teams. So it's been a problem all year.
And I think the right way to put that is that possession, right? You're down 3, you got 4 free throws and possession of the ball, and you come away still down by 1. I mean, that's unbelievable, right? You have to come out with at least a tie, if not the lead, at home, right? I mean, yeah, it was that possession was, as a live watcher, was unbelievable to watch. My roommates were pretty entertained with my reaction. I'll put it that way. But
boy, it kind of seemed pretty emblematic of the whole season if you think about it, with free throws being missed, which has been a key problem all year. And then on the possession, you have Valentine pretty much try and do it by himself. And I think that was the possession where Valentine just got an awful shot off trying to draw a foul. And it was just, I know, Chris, I saw you say it on Twitter, like, what's the point of even drawing a foul at this point in the season, because they're not sinking the free throws. But it just seemed like, not to be too pessimistic, but even when the technical was fouled, there was no confidence that this was going to, for sure, put the game back in MSU's favor. You were kind of nervous the whole time. So.
And, I saw a Denza Valentine, who is MSU's top free throw shooter, top free throw shooter at 84%, deferred and said that Forbes should shoot the free throws, who now on the year is 80%. And I thought that was an interesting situation, because Valentine, I guess it said Forbes had been in that situation before. I know they were high school teammates, so Valentine knows him well. But Valentine himself has been in situations this year with key free throws for MSU. I believe the Penn State game and the Northwestern overtime game, and he came through. So for a captain, for that to happen was a bit surprising. But again, Forbes 80%. You got to do You got to do better than that. And like I said, it's a third game where you can literally say free throws cost them the game because it's not. It's not a play, it's not a bounce, it's just a free throw. And right there with the guards, this wasn't an example. This wasn't a situation of the not the right guys getting to the line, which has been a problem this year because outside of Trice, the next two guys who get to the line most are Dawson, Schilling, and Costello. Costello's at 70%, but Schilling and Dawson are below 50%. This was the right guys getting to the line. And didn't come through. But Ohio State now is next. The Buckeyes are what are they at? 19-6. They've won 5 of their last 6 games, only losing a close one at Purdue. They seem to have gotten into a bit of a groove. They don't really do anything poorly. They do everything pretty well, other than getting to the free throw line and making free throws. But other than that, they're number 20 in adjusted offensive efficiency, number 34 in adjusted defensive efficiency. D'Angelo Russell is one of the best players in the nation, probably the best player in the Big Ten. Izzo had a joke that they would play a box +1 against Ohio State with a box around Russell and one guy covering the other 4. But Joe, when you're looking at the Buckeyes and you're looking at this matchup, what's sticking out to you?
So I watched a pretty decent chunk of the Ohio State-Penn State game last night, just sort of in preparation, just because it's such a major matchup. And what I will say is that the athleticism of Ohio State is somewhat terrifying. I mean, going 1 through 4 at least, they have a ton of guys who can play both ways. And really give you problems. The one interesting comparison is Jayshawn Tate, who's a true freshman for Ohio State, who has a stat line that is very similar to Brandon Dawson's. Does a great job on the offensive boards, decent job on the defensive boards, but is just really athletic. Doesn't shoot the ball particularly well either, but it's an interesting comparison when he's maybe the 4th or 5th best guy on the team. Though there's a couple things that are about Ohio State that stand out from a statistical point of view. They're not very good at rebounding defensively. They're 214th in the country in terms of the offensive rebounding percentage that they give up, and that's consistent with sort of their center. They have a three-headed center monster between Amir Williams, Anthony Lee, and Trey McDonald. And I think that Anthony Lee is out. Is that correct? But the 3 of them are pretty weak, regardless. So that's one area where I think Costello and Schilling might be able to have a better game than average, right? Where those guys who have not been very good in the last 2 games are going to be really important going forward. So.
And Mark Loving will be playing for them. He had been suspended for a bit, but he, the 6'7" forward, he is good to go. So Ohio State will have just about everything there. Yeah, I mean, it's at home. I think gives MSU. You would think gives MSU a little bit of an edge, but they've lost those 3 games I mentioned that they lost on free throws were all home games. So Breslin has been far from a difficult place to play, that's for sure. I think it being a weekend game will probably help in terms of getting the zone a bit into it more. But as we've kind of said all year, and I've said all year, with each game you just don't know what kind of team is going to show up. It's just been inconsistent all year. Is it the team that goes 7 of 18 at the free throw line, or is it the team that hits 52% of its threes? It's just, you never really know going into these games what kind of game MSU is going to play. So, I mean, Ken Pom gives them a 56% chance of winning, 1 point win, which, is pretty much a toss-up with maybe home court being the decider there. I think I'm going to pick the Buckeyes to win this one in a close one that comes down to the stretch. Joe, you got a pick?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be hard to argue with your pick there. I think Ohio State the athleticism that exhibit there, and then also the inability for this team to do much down the stretch. I also think that Ohio State is probably going to perform better defensively than they have over the course of most of this year, just because Thad Matta is a very good defensive coach, and they haven't performed particularly well defensively up until this point, but they're really young. And guys like Shannon Scott have been asked to do a little more than they're used to, so I think it's going to be a really rough game. Actually, I'm not sure it'll be close, and I'm definitely going to take Ohio State, just because I don't see where MSU can exhibit any sort of advantage. I mean,
I think they're going to they would need a big day from behind the 3-point line, as kind of what they need if they want to pull off games like that. You look at. So, Jeremy, what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of got to be in agreement with you guys. It's the one nice thing is to think that Ohio State is 3-5 on the road. So, if Breslin had been as tough as maybe it was a few years ago to come into, you could feel a little more confident. But barring Brandon Dawson going off and having a pretty great offense and defensive game, it's hard to trust this team late in situations. So I probably would agree with in agreement to go with Ohio State.
Who we got? No, go ahead, sorry.
Oh yeah. I was gonna say I gotta agree that it's probably Ohio State, but it'll be interesting to see also what Izzo does with the lineup. I know I was a big fan of starting Nairn against Northwestern, but it's hard to know if he's gonna stick with that lineup, or was that more just because of the opponent than if that's the new direction he's taken. So I'd probably say Ohio State probably in the 5 to 7 point range, but would definitely love to get a win. Surprise me too. So
we got three staff predictions. They're going with the Buckeyes to come out of Breslin with a win. Now, before we have another podcast, they will also travel to Michigan on Tuesday. Another short turnaround as they had last time these teams met. Michigan's been an inspired team at home. They took MSU to overtime last year. It's very clear that Beilein's teams have no fear of MSU, and they shouldn't. I believe they've won 4 straight at Chrysler, with the last one coming in 2010 on the Kalen Lucas jumper in the final seconds. That I actually covered that game at the State News. Since then, it's been 4 straight losses at Chrysler for the Spartans. I actually think MSU comes away with a win in that one, in another very, very close game. I think Michigan, at this point, you wonder how much they have left in the tank, down to something like 7 scholarship guys. You lose another overtime game, they'll have quite a bit of rest from the turnaround, but there's just not a lot in the tank there through no fault of them, just kind of where the thing. Unless Derek Walton comes back, I'll say it doesn't look like he's close to coming back at all. If he's out again, I think MSU will narrowly break that Chrysler losing streak. Joe, what do you think?
I think that it doesn't matter too much whether or not Walton's back. I think that's probably a win either way, just because I can't imagine that MSU ends up playing so poorly defensively as they did. I mean, going into that game, it was surprising to me any time basically that Michigan scored. I mean, I just don't understand how, Zach Irvin is a pretty solid offensive player, but other than that, I just don't see it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good opportunity.
I think Spike Albrecht, I think, is by far their best offensive weapon, at least most consistent. I think Rockman had something like a career game at Breslin last year. I think he's going to be a really good player, but he's kind of been off the last couple of games. But I think Spike's the guy of anybody they need to stop. I think it's him. He seems to be their most consistent.
Oh boy, yeah. I mean, when that's right. When that's your most consistent guy, that's a rough spot to be in.
Well, and that's why they're something like 13, 11, 13, and 12 right now. But.
Right. So Chris, before we ask you a quick question, and Jeremy, I'm interested in your take on this Michigan State game as well. But how did you feel about the Nairn insertion into the starting lineup? Did you feel like that really changed things around, or?
I don't know. I think the fact that Nairn is such a non-factor when it comes to shooting the ball, that a smarter defense could adjust better. I mean, it was very clear to stop MSU, you want to chase them off the three-point line, and Northwestern seemed to have no interest in doing that. I think against a smarter defensive team like Ohio State or even Michigan, it won't work as much. But with the way Trice has kind of been up and down, I think more minutes for him is not necessarily all that bad. But in terms of starting, if getting up towards starter minutes, I don't think that's where it needs to go. And the other thing is stopping MSU running the ball. Nairn is obviously very, very good at that because of his speed. But that's another thing Northwestern seem to have no interest in stopping for whatever reason. Normally, they don't even send guys to get offensive rebounds and just get back. At least that's what they used to do under Bill Carmody. Against Northwestern, MSU was running, MSU was taking threes, and that's the two things you can't let MSU do. I don't expect Ohio State nor Michigan to allow MSU to do that. So I think starting Nairn worked in this situation, but I think that was more because of the opponent rather than what MSU was able to do. But if they want to just start running the ball every single time they can because they have no faith in the half-court offense, Nairn's not a bad guy to do that, though.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, I'm really frustrated with college basketball analytics to some extent because there's no lineup data. We have no ability to prove or disprove one way or the other. There was an iSports web blog post about, one of their writers thinking that Nairn should be starting because the team performs better when Nairn's on the court. It's like that's an easily like provable or disprovable point. If
like a plus minus.
Well, and plus minus is flawed for various reasons. But right, but the basic idea.
For a guy like Nairn who doesn't play a ton of minutes, it might be interesting.
Right, you could at least say.
Especially when if he plays, he's only at the one. It's not like Trice where he could play the two or the one. All of Nairn's minutes, he's the point guard in that situation. So I think a plus minus for him would be an interesting thing.
Right, and to me, yeah, I mean, the Nairn thing seemed like a weird anomaly more than anything. I thought, you can start him again if you want. He had a turnover in the first 2 minutes. Trice came in the first 3 minutes, anyways. Like okay, start him and say that you did. I guess if
it's kind of like the opposite.
Trice to some extent, but
it's kind of like the opposite. It's kind of like the opposite of 2010 when Draymond won Big Ten's Sixth Man of the Year despite being like fourth or fifth on the team in minutes. He just never started, but then would come in, at the first time out or something.
Right, so it's in name only, right? It doesn't really matter. All it's doing is same thing with Schilling and Costello, right? Costello plays more minutes than Schilling regularly at the 5 anyways. It's just I don't know what it is. It's a motivational tactic to some degree. It's a weird thing. It's frustrating to me that people can make the claim like, oh yeah, this team's better with Nairn on the court, and then I can't say like, yes, you're right, or no, you're wrong, because the data doesn't exist, but it does in other places. So, that's just my own issue.
I think over time, when you have a guy who's not a threat to shoot the ball at all, it's not a positive over a guy like Trice, who, for all intents and purposes, is playing like one of the best point guards in the Big Ten when you look at his assists and turnovers.
Right, and maybe you guys can tell me this or not, but do you think Nairn plays good defense? I haven't seen him play particularly good defense.
I think he gets around screens very, very well because of his size and because of his quickness. When you compare it to Trice, Trice has got some quick hands. We don't really have a ton of great defensive stats when you look at that. I'm looking at Nairn here.
I'll say is that, so in terms of aggressiveness, right? I mean, you look at fouls committed versus steal percentage, right? So
yeah.
So Nairn's committing a lot of fouls without getting a lot of steals.
Yep, especially compared to Trice and Valentine. So it's kind of all we have really to go off of.
Right, and I wish that we had plus minus, like real plus minus when it comes to college ball. Unfortunately, we don't, for a lot of reasons. But yeah, it's frustrating. But even eye test, right? I mean, just eye test is really all I'm asking. I don't think that Nairn really plays good defense. Just watching him, I mean, he does seem to get caught out of position. He's not an all Big Ten type defender anyways, and he's not adding a whole lot offensively. Like, I'd be willing to put good money on the fact that Travis Trice improves the MSU lineup on both ends to a large degree. Like, I don't get that take. I mean, I think you're right. I think it's unfortunate that he started against Northwestern, because then you can say, like, okay, they blew out Northwestern, so what, right? Like,
I think that was I think the biggest factor in that, like I said, was Northwestern just having no clue how you're supposed to defend this MSU team. What do you think, Jeremy? On Nairn and on the Michigan game?
Yeah, I think I can agree with Joe. I think mainly the Nairn thing was probably more of a motivational tactic, if anything. Probably that's just Izzo trying to play head games. And I'm not as astute on watching eye test for basketball, but I do think that if anything, the defense difference between him and Trice is Trice definitely probably wins out on that one. I do like Nairn's speed to push the ball, but it's also one of those things. He's a freshman, so when he's going to push the ball, he'll probably turn it over a little more than Trice would pushing, because he's just going to make that freshman mistake. So I mean, looking ahead too, I mean, with Michigan coming up, I think that, like you guys stated, it's pretty hard to see Michigan beating us, but it's all about how they. I kind of probably want to wait till after Ohio State to see where this team is at too, because like Joe says, it's gonna be a pretty physical game, and assuming no injuries, I'd have to think that we can go to Chrysler and win. But with this team, it's hard to make a guarantee on anything.
And especially in Chrysler, which has been over the last 5 years, it's been a tougher place than Breslin in this rivalry. If you look at where the home teams won, I think you'll probably get Michigan's best shot in this situation against MSU. So see what happens. So we've got all of us picking Ohio State, and then all of us picking MSU to beat Michigan. So variety of opinions here on the Only Podcast. But we'll finish this up with some hockey talk. Last week, Michigan State went to Soldier Field in Chicago for a 4-team tournament with Michigan, or a 4-team doubleheader with Michigan, Miami of Ohio, and Western Michigan. And if you wondered how many people went, the answer is not a lot. And it was pretty expected. I heard the announced crowd was about 20,000, which I think was an absolute lie. That might have been tickets sold, I'm sure, but.
And I think that was also, they came out later and admitted that was combining both games. So
yeah, and not to mention the games were pushed back because of ice and weather, and you kind of predicted it to be a disaster, and that's pretty much what it was. And the Spartans also lost the game 4-1 with an empty netter. Is that right, Jeremy?
Yeah, it ended up being 4-1.
Yeah, it was 3-0. Pretty even game, actually. I thought it was a pretty even game. Michigan just got some garbage goals that MSU can never afford to give up because of its offensive lacking. But Jeremy, thoughts on the game and the event?
Yeah, going with the event, I have to say, I was happy because I was supposed to be going to the game, and then some stuff came up work-wise that I ended up not being able to go. So I was happy that I wasn't stuck in downtown Chicago waiting to find out if a game was actually going to happen. But, it has to be one of those things. I know the coaches have come out and said, even with the delays and the small crowds, the players like playing these outdoor games because it's an event. But I can't imagine that players were too happy to be playing on that ice Saturday night. It looked awful. I know after the Western Michigan game, guys were talking about when they would hit the blue line, the puck would roll up for them because there was, the ice would go low and high in certain spots. So I can't imagine that it was a lot of fun out there for them at all. And as far as the game, it was, it's like you said, it was 1-0 after the first period. Just Michigan got off to a quick start, and the 2 goals in the second period were right after MSU defensemen made some pretty awful turnovers. which, against a team like Michigan, they're going to finish those 9 times out of 10. So you take away those 2 turnovers, and maybe you have a close game in the third where you can steal, a couple points or something. But it's with this team, if you get down 3-0, there's just no way you feel that they can get 3 goals to get back into it. So after those 2 defensive miscues, sure, State kind of looked better in the third, but it's, a big thing with score effects too. I'm sure Michigan let off the gas a little bit. So
yeah, I mean, they talk about it being special. That's Michigan's, I think, 7th outdoor game.
Yeah,
it's not that, but it's not special anymore. And especially when they did this in Soldier Field, I think a year or 2 ago with Minnesota and Wisconsin and Notre Dame.
Yeah, it was 2 years.
That had a decent crowd, but it was also for one, it was during the day, it wasn't at night, and 2, you had a Wisconsin team that's right up. You had Notre Dame and Wisconsin, which are right nearby, and then Minnesota, which obviously has a great fan base, and also it was the first time they did it. You just rehashed it with teams that have been in 1 billion outdoor games, including Michigan State last year at Comerica Park. So this was nothing nobody hadn't seen before. Nobody cared, and I don't know why they expected any more out of it. Jeremy, what's next for the hockey team? Are they playing this weekend?
Yeah, they've got a pretty nice, pretty big series against Penn State at Munn this weekend. Right. Penn State's 6 points up on them right now, which in the Big Ten with 3-point games, if they can get a sweep, they can pull even with Penn State. So it's a pretty big series. I know they've got, between this series and the 2 series against Wisconsin are probably their best places to get, a series sweep, because it's hard to imagine sweeping Michigan or going on the road against Minnesota and getting a clean sweep. So, pretty good chance to come out and get some crucial points against Penn State, a team that they, should have a chance to do it against. But especially because Penn State's really a different team when you're not playing them at home. So
yeah, when you look at these 2 programs, Penn State's just a couple years removed from being a club team, and they're in, I think, 2nd place.
Yeah,
you've got an MSU team that's in its 3rd or 4th year under Anastas now. Criticism has been mounting. I think it's clear that the MSU program is better this year than it was last year, but the offense is still lacking. And when you look at what Penn State's been able to do quickly, fans are going to draw parallels between where these 2 programs are at and their future directions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Anastas, they actually asked Anastas that at the press conference this week, talking about kind of, because it's his 4th year and the 3rd year of Penn State, they're asking him to draw comparisons. And I know he wasn't trying to make excuses, but he was talking about, almost in a way that first season that he had when they made the NCAA tournament was almost ended up being a bad thing working against him, because he ended up losing 11 players off that team. And then he comes back for his 2nd year after he makes the tournament, and everyone's expecting that again, and he's trying to, just field 6 defensemen after he lost Torrey Krug and all the experience that he lost. So,
I'll say, I think if he doesn't have that tournament berth that year, I think the Heat would be up quite a bit more on him. I think obviously if the classes were spread out a little bit more, maybe the lows aren't as low in the last 2 years. But I don't think Rick Comley would have taken that team to the tournament like Anastas did. He did a very good job in his first year. And he had to with the talent that they had, but pressure's kind of coming up. After this year, he's got 1 more year on his initial contract, and I know Chris Solari and I went back and forth a little bit over this about what needs to improve in order for him to get an extension and move on. But it's a big series to kind of see where the programs are at, and then you've got Wisconsin, which is unfathomably bad this year compared to what they've been, and MSU has to at least sweep the series that's at home, and may probably get 3 out of 4 wins out of the 4 games, just based on what the Badgers haven't been able to do. If they can't, then depending on they're safely in 4th place right now. I know, well ahead of Wisconsin and Ohio State, but if that gap between them and the the top 3 teams widens, it won't look very good.
Well, one thing I'll chip in with is just that both these games this weekend are on TV. The game, well, tonight, right? We're technically into Friday at this point.
Yes.
Yep.
Is on Fox Sports Detroit, and then the game on Saturday is on BTN. So
Well, there you go. Good. It's always
that's
good when college hockey's on TV. Need more of that.
well, yeah, that makes me like 1,000% more interested, right? I can actually watch it to some extent. So
Yeah.
so that's cool. I actually might do that.
Yeah, it should be a good series this week. I mean, we look at the last Penn State series. They got the shootout win on Friday night where they pretty much outplayed Penn State, and then Saturday was just a weird game. You had Penn State unveiled a 3rd jersey, and that was also the weekend that Paterno got all his wins back. So they put the helmet sticker on, and it was kind of a crazy atmosphere that State had to walk into on that Saturday. They took a 2-1 lead after the first, and then they just got snowed in. I think it was in the last 3 minutes of the second period and the first 2 minutes of the third. They gave up 4 goals. So
I thought they won that. I thought they won that game. It was a shootout.
Friday night was a shootout that they won. They got the 2 points. And then Saturday night was Friday night was the night that they technically put the jersey or the stickers on the helmets.
Yeah.
But then the controversy kind of spurred up on Saturday about it, and Penn State came back that Saturday and kind of snowed them under. So.
Yeah. So before we wrap up here, did you end up watching the 30 for 30 on the Soviet Union hockey team?
Yes, I did. I ended up
that was fantastic. Yeah, that was one of my favorites. Probably top 3 that they've done. I thought just incredibly well done. Told a well-rounded story. I didn't even know all that stuff about Slava Fetisov, and I kind of feel ashamed that I didn't. Just really, really good, and it's always interesting when you get different perspectives on events like that. Like they always made a point in Miracle, the movie, to say like the Russians don't even celebrate after goals, like they're machines. But that wasn't the case. They celebrated after goals, and seeing their original coach there, who they compared to a, kind of a romantic, the guy who pretty much developed the Russian style of play. I thought that part was just tremendously interesting.
Yeah, if you want to have some fun and fall through a wormhole, just look up the Tarasov practice videos from when he was first. They have like the old black and white films, but yeah, he has guys out there doing somersaults and all types of crazy things. I know they showed a little bit of that in the movie too. So it was pretty good. I'm also interested to see. I don't know if it's come out to theaters yet, but there's a new Fetisov documentary that's out too that follows him going through getting his passport and everything like that. So that should be good too. Just kind of see both sides of it. But yeah, once I know I heard an interview about the Fetisov documentary, and they were talking about what the director thought of Miracle, and he kind of held his tongue, but you can kind of tell that it's he just basically said it's a Disney movie made by Disney. So
yeah,
that's pretty much all there was to it.
Do you see it at all, Joe?
No, I didn't. Unfortunately. Yeah, I was. I mean, back in the day, right, growing up in Metro Detroit, I was a huge Red Wings fan. I got to take a tour of the locker rooms about a month ago, so that was cool. But
cool. So, alrighty, I think it's going to wrap things up here. So a busy weekend with home hockey and basketball games, and we will catch you guys next week after everything wraps up. So if you made it this far, thanks for listening. You can follow me on Twitter at Chris Vanini. Follow Jeremy at Jeremy Doer, and Joe at Jobin #2 and also follow at The Only Colors, and check out theonlycolors.com for all sorts of good MSU stuff. We got some new writers on there doing some good stuff. So that'll do it for here. I'm Chris Vanini. Thanks for listening, and take care, everybody. See you.
thanks.
See ya.